Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JD Talks NASCAR. How has everybody been this last week? We got to cap off Mother's Day weekend with a pretty good Darlington race, and hope you all enjoyed it. If you're able to watch, I know a lot of people were busy this Mother's Day, including me, but I made time to watch the race, and watch highlights, and I actually got to watch the last 35 laps. Um, in real time, so I saw the craziness unfold. But I hope you all had a good weekend, and I'm ready to recap what to start off with. Darlington, the race itself, nothing was really happening for a lot of it, and then the last 35, 40 laps happened, and chaos ensued. And sometimes with NASCAR, that's what happens. Other times, like Kansas, it's full action the whole way. But Darlington puts on another good race, another good finish, another good battle for the win. Darlington is one of the most challenging tracks on the NASCAR circuit, but also one of my favorite to watch just because it's so unique. It's a very unique racetrack. I like watching all three series here: trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. I think all of them put on very good races. So let's get into it. First off, and I hate to start off by being a downer, but I was honestly disappointed in, you know, the throwback paint schemes kind of disappearing. And I know Hendrick Motorsports did a great job. They were like one of the few teams that did throwbacks, and I thought they knocked theirs out of the park. I thought all four cars looked awesome. I was really disappointed that most of the field didn't have a throwback. Some people are saying that NASCAR throwbacks, the whole weekend in general, the throwback idea is kind of watered down now. Not a lot of people are wanting to do it. I hate that because I feel like with Darlington, um, and I get this first race isn't the Southern 500. That's now the second Darlington date, so maybe they could go back to doing throwback schemes at the Southern 500. That would be awesome. But we've got to get something figured out because the nostalgia is something that I think NASCAR needs, to be honest with you. And I get some of the drivers, including my favorite driver, Denny Hamlin, said on his podcast last week that he thought that the throwback idea, like I said, has ran its course. And I disagree, to be honest with you. When I think of Darlington, I think of the throwback paint schemes. I think of the old FS1 logo, like the old NASCAR logos on replays and on the ticker and stuff like that. That's what I think of, and it's kind of disappointing that now half the field wasn't in throwbacks. I think that's a bigger issue than people are acting like it is. And I know in the grand scheme of things, it really doesn't matter. It's up to the sponsors anyway. But I, as a fan who loves differing paint schemes and stuff like that, and the nostalgia of throwing it back to old NASCAR drivers or even personal throwbacks, I missed that this weekend. So I just wanted to say that before I get into it. If you disagree, if you think, I mean, I'm probably in the minority here, honestly. I probably am the only one making a big deal out of this, but I feel like it needs to be talked about more, to be honest with you. But you all let me know what you think. I always value your all's opinions, whether you agree or disagree with me. You all know that. So let me know how you feel about it. Now, as far as the race goes, I thought this was one of the best Darlington races um, in a while. Overall, not, but I mean, the finish was awesome. And then you had the fireworks after the race. We'll get into that too. But to start it off, Kyle Larson in the Terry Labonte throwback. Man, that was my favorite one this year. I feel like I think Larson, Hendrick as a whole knocked it out of the park, like I said, with all four of their throwback schemes. But Kyle Larson's really stood out because it's been there for so long. I wish they would have done it every year, and they finally did it. And I think it looked amazing, especially out front. Kyle Larson wins the first stage. After that, John Hunter Nemechek self spins and his tires go down. Uh, you know, what was a great start to the year for the 42 team has really turned bad the last couple weeks. Feels like he hasn't been finishing at all. They run most of the laps, but then towards the end, seems like they have issues. Martinsville really s- jumps out to me about that point. But the 42 started the season really well, but it's just kind of came back down to earth, I guess. The last couple of weeks, as he has not had a very good last month for sure. Um, William Byron, Martin Truex, and Ryan Blaney. Get right into this. Um, you know, I think Byron was in the wrong here. Um, to be honest with you, just watching it, but I will say I think Blaney's radio transmissions, man, Ron Blaney, and I like Blaney, but if you listen to his radio during a race, you would be amazed at some of the stuff you hear. And this is this is another one. You all can go find the quote. I'm not going to repeat it, but just a very. I mean, I get that his day ended off of a stupid move from the 24. I get that. Um, and ended Truex's day as far as being in contention. He was running top 10. He was my pick to win this race. He was running top 10, top 5 up until this point, and once he got the front end damage, he was not a factor at all. But so I hated to see that for my pick. But um, there's not enough room, I don't think, anywhere. Maybe the straightaway by the start finish line there. That's about the only place you can go 3 wide at Darlington. And Byron did it going into a turn, and that was a huge mistake. I think it was exiting turn 2. I could be wrong. I'm trying to think of the replay and what I saw, but just makes it 3 wide. Blaney gets up into the fence, absolutely kills his car, and then Truex runs into the back of Blaney. Um, Blaney showed his displeasure. I think he is right in being mad, but at the same time, you can't say what he said. I'm surprised that hasn't made more headlines. I mean, I know some people have talked about it on NASCAR podcasts, but I'm really surprised that hasn't blew up bigger than it was. I guess you're in the heat of the battle, and you say stuff like that, but there's no room, in my opinion, for that. But uh, you know, there was talk about, you know, I mean, you have to be living under a rock to not know Blaney and Byron's history. As far as William dating Ryan's sister, and I think that people had fun with that, with them getting into it after that relationship. So I hated it for Blaney because he's really, coming off his championship year last year, he has not performed the way that I know he wants to this year. So hated that for the 12 car. Definitely hated it for the 19 being my pick to win this thing, win at Darlington. Hate it for all those guys. Byron went on to finish good. He went out. I mean, he kind of caused the wreck and went on to finish with no problems. So good for the 24 team. And Zane Smith, another guy that has had a rough season, self spins the 71 car. I liked his throwback. It was cool. It was a red and white, like vintage looking car. I thought that was awesome. Any teams that contributed to throwbacks this week, I'm all for. So hated to see his day didn't end with the self spin, but put him in the back even more than he was to begin with. Tyler Reddick wins stage 2. At this point, looked like Reddick was going to run away with this thing. It looked like he was kick and tail after Larson gave up the lead at the end of stage 1 there. It looked like it was Reddick's race to lose. And we're going to find out what happened to Reddick. But he did lead a lot of laps for sure. It definitely was. It felt like it was his race to lose for sure. After Reddick gets the stage 2 win, Kyle Larson's day ends with what I think was a flat tire. He just had pitted, came out, but I think there was definitely an issue with that 5 car, and he gets loose, hits the wall, and ends his day. Hated to see that for him with that sick paint scheme, with a good run that he had going, coming off of last week's win at Kansas. So hated to see that for Larson, but he'll be back. He's already practicing in Indy for the Indy 500. I saw today, so he's got a busy month on his hand. Definitely a busy week here as he gets ready for Indy and the Coke 600 at the same time on the same day. So shout out to Kyle Larson for pulling the double. That will be something definitely to watch as a race fan. Um, then we get into the really, really interesting stuff. We get into the Reddick versus Busher versus Brad Keselowski battle, and this all happened around the time I started to watch. Like there's about 35 to go where it really heated up. Reddick and Brad Keselowski battled off that restart for a while. Back and forth. Nobody could clear each other. If it felt like Brad would pull up to the side of Reddick's car, but just couldn't clear him. But they had a good, clean battle. Nobody wrecked. I mean, they at the very end of it, I guess it wasn't really the cleanest, but it was definitely not intentional. Brad K kind of came up, Reddick came down, and they both got into the fence. Reddick got into the fence, and Brad K kind of stuck to Reddick's car, and it allowed Chris Buescher to make a awesome move. And I really want to say, and that feels like every week we're talking about a move that Chris Buescher makes during the race, and that he's definitely got better. He won 3 races last year, I know of, but I just mean like coming down to it in that very moment at a race, in the middle of a race, making moves. The Talladega move with Logano comes to mind. Um, and then this crazy 3 wide pass that Buescher made when Keselowski and Reddick got into the fence. Uh, Chris Buescher's getting better, and I think he's going to be a guy that definitely. I think he wins at least one race this year. I mean, he's running too well not to. Arguably should have won this one, and we'll get into that. But Buescher was able to get past both of them and lead laps. Um, and then this is where the chaos ensues. Tyler Reddick, he raced behind Buescher there for several laps, and then decided he wanted to go for the lead. Goes to the bottom to try to slide up and clear Buescher. He just failed. That's the only way that there is to put it. And I really like Tyler Reddick. One, he drives for 23XI, Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan. I love that team. But when people make mistakes, I'm going to call them out. And Reddick knew he made a mistake here, and I respect him for that. But just a failed slide job. He slid up into Buescher, which then flattened both of their tires. Just a bad situation overall because Chris Buescher, like he said in the post race, he doesn't have a win yet. Reddick does, and wins are everything in NASCAR right now for as far as playoffs go and playoff points. So you could see why Buescher was mad. I'm actually surprised he wasn't more mad. He that's the maddest I've ever seen him. But at the same time, we're lucky we didn't get a pushing match, and I would not want to get into a pushing and fight with Buescher. He's a big old dude, and especially if I'm Reddick's size, which Reddick, I mean, I'll say he admitted fault right away, and I do respect that. He definitely screwed this one up. There's no way around that. Um, and their history, they've raced each other clean from what I can tell. And they both said that in the post race as well. So I know it was definitely an accident on Reddick's part, and I do hate it for him because I'm a fan of Reddick and I'm a fan of Buescher. I like both guys. They're both very good drivers and have won multiple races. So I like and respect both of them, and I hope I hope they race each other clean. But Buescher, if I'm Buescher and I'm battling for a win against Reddick, I mean, I'm pulling out all the stops now, at least one time to try to get this win, to get a win, to get in the playoffs. So, you know, it's been a minute since we've had that post race, um, you know, interaction. I'm trying to, was it Gregson and Ross? Was that the last one? Am I missing one? That was like a big, uh, newsworthy pit road interaction. I'm trying to think of, but I think Gregson and Ross, and actually punches were thrown there. There was no punches thrown here with Buescher and Reddick, but you could definitely tell Busher was not happy at all, and I do not blame him. And at the same time, I will say it looked like Reddick was visibly sorry. I will say that. He looked like he was almost in tears because I think he respects Busher and the way he races him, and he just totally didn't mean to do what he did. So, if you're Busher, you don't want to hear that, but at the same time, you accept it, I guess. But the second straight week, Busher has been screwed pretty badly. So, of course, last week losing by 1/1000th of a second, and then coming back the next week and feeling like you've got a race winning car just to get it pulled out from under you definitely has to sting for Busher. So we'll see if he can get back. We'll see if he can get back into victory lane. But um, you know, when someone screws up in a NASCAR race, that means someone else is going to benefit from that. And this time it was the third place car, and that was Brad Keselowski, Chris Buescher's teammate, um, who, because of the Reddick and Buescher battle, both of them had the pit. That leaves Brad K in the lead. And, he did what he needed to do. He had a good car all day anyway, especially on the long run. It seemed like the six was really fast. And for the first time in 3 years, Brad Keselowski gets to victory lane. That's crazy to think that it's been that long. And he knew he was due. He's ran good so many times and just had fluke things happen like pit road issues or, anything just that could happen possibly. So glad to see Brad K wind up in victory lane. And if you see the speed now, at mile and a half the last 2 weeks, the Fords have definitely been better. So could I see Brad getting into victory lane one more time this year? Yeah, I could. I honestly figured he would end up winning one last year. It never happened. But, Ford seemed like they're running better. This is their first win of the season in the Cup Series. So, good for Brad K, good for Ford. And I think they'll continue to be more competitive and more competitive. We will see. But when it comes down to championship, it's hard to count Ford out because the last 2 years they've ran like crap during the regular season and turn around and won a championship. So we'll see what happens there. But is there a potential third manufacturer that could win a title? I still lean no. But now, at least with a win, you have to kind of put them in that conversation for sure. Um, so Brad Keselowski wins. I think it was the first time in 110 races. So shout out to Brad for that. And you know, I was very satisfied with this Darlington race. Now I'm going to go through our notable finishers like we do every week and see where everybody's favorite driver finished. Which, if you watch, you already know, obviously. But um, Ty Gibbs second. That's a big run for the 54. They had a lot of speed at the beginning of the year and then have kind of cooled off. Now with the second place run, I like to think they figured something out. Josh Berry third. Man, Josh Berry just keeps getting better and better as the season goes on. That team continues to get better. You got to think that I don't know. I doubt he'll get a win this year. Um, but he continues to crank out top 10 finishes. This was a top 3, which is huge. So good for Josh Berry. Denny fourth, and he was never a factor, it seemed like today. So if your worst day is a fourth place finish, I'm taking that all day and twice on Sundays. I mean, it's when you show up to the racetrack and you feel like you weren't in contention, but you still bring home a fourth place finish, you're doing something right. And I feel like that's in the situation that Denny is in right now. Chase Briscoe, a top 5, huge for that team. Byron, after being the cause of that incident, brings it home 6th. Bubba Wallace 7th. Alex Bowman 8th, and this is a huge one. For the first time, other than a super speedway, Rick Ware Racing puts a car in the top 10, and it's at Darlington, one of the hardest tracks on the circuit. But Justin Haley brings it home 9th. That's huge for that team. Absolutely huge. Justin Haley continues to prove that he is a legit driver in the NASCAR Cup Series. They have that alliance with RFK who won the race, but he continues to will that thing to the best ability that he can, and it's awesome to see that. Michael McDowell 10th. He needed that run. Um, Now, the not so good finishers, Joey Logano, which was my pick in fantasy this week. I know some of y'all really like listening to me and my continued struggles with my fantasy picks. Joey Logano was my pick this week. He ranks on 21st after running top 10, top 5 all day. I mean, he ran good all day long until the third stage. So I don't get it, man. I really don't. But once again, if I pick you, you're cursed. Martin Truex 25th. That was my pick to win the race. And I think, I don't know if I doubt he would have won. I don't think he had race winning speed, but he definitely had top 5 speed before the wreck. Kyle Busch 27th, man, he fell off bad. And then of course Busher 30th, Reddick 32nd, Larson 34th, and Ryan Blaney 36th due to that incident. So um now we move on to the All-Star race at North Wilkesboro. And um you know, Actually, you know what? Before we get into North Wilkesboro, I've got a couple news tidbits I want to hit. Number one, and this is something that I've been very excited to talk about. NASCAR announced this week that starting in 2025, there's going to be a mid-season tournament. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what we needed. Um, Shout out to Denny Hamlin for thinking of this idea. I know I don't think anybody has gave him credit, and he is extremely due for credit because he thought of this last year on his podcast. Uh, I did an episode breaking down the winner, like breaking down the bracket round by round. I actually correctly picked William Byron. He would have won it last year if they did it. Um, which they did. Denny did it on his podcast, but I mean NASCAR as a whole. I picked William Byron to win it, and he did. But you know, I think this is going to be huge for NASCAR. I think really, I think the ratings for it will be up there. Sports betting wise, I think it's huge for people, to bet on matchups, head to head matchups. I think that'll be huge. I think it'll be huge for a bracket as well. You know, just people to fill out a bracket like I did last year, like several people did last year on Dirty Mo Media, which is who runs Denny's podcast. But um, it's just another thing added for fun, and the winner gets $1 million. So I think the drivers will be into it too. Imagine you're sitting there watching, and your drivers run. The two drivers that are head to head battling are running fifth and sixth. Do you take the sixth place finish and the points, or do you try to rough a guy up for the fifth place spot to advance in the bracket? That's all going to be something that we're going to watch next season, and I think it'll be awesome to see. I think uh, I think Atlanta is one of them. They said, which will be insane. A super speedway with that will be crazy. You could have Cinderella stories for sure if you start out the bracket at a super speedway. So we'll see what happens. I think that's a huge win for NASCAR. I really wish they would have done it this season. I still don't think there was any reason why we couldn't, but they choose to elect to do it next year. So that's something to look forward to as well. Another piece of news: Prime Video announced this morning that Amazon Prime Video announced this morning that they are going to get next year's Coke 600 as their first race. So that'll be awesome. I think Amazon Prime does such a good. They did a great job with Thursday Night Football these past couple seasons, and just the broadcasting's great. The graphics are great. I can't wait for it. I think this is another great move for NASCAR. I think NASCAR's rolling in the right direction with everything they're doing, to be honest with you. And this is just another stepping stone. I think Prime Video will be a good success for NASCAR. Everybody's moving more towards streaming. It seems like I know the older fans are probably going to disagree with me, but I really like the move to Amazon Prime. To be honest with you, and I hate talking about negatively about anything, but it, and if you've watched so far this year, and honestly for the last couple of years, the Fox broadcast is just not up to par with what NBC does, or Peacock even. So it'll be good to get a new face and a new streaming partner for NASCAR. I think they'll get that in Amazon Prime. Um, so now we move on to North Wilkesboro, and we've got the truck race and then the All Star race as well. Um, so truck race will be something for sure. They raced here last year. I felt like it went decent. Um, so now we'll see. Does Christian Eckes continue his short track dominance? Um, I lean yes, but I picked him last week, so I really don't want to pick him 2 weeks in a row. Um, but then I look. I guess I'll go. Ross Chastain is racing again this week at North Wilkesboro, and he just won last week. Um, I'm sorry, folks, but I'm going Christian Eckes again. I picked him last week, but I'm picking him. I think just his short track racing is just well above anybody else in the field. That's just honestly how I feel about it. Um, you've got Butterbean uh, making his debut, Brendan Queen, in the one truck. He's more of a late model guy, but I think he'll run well at North Wilkesboro. Sammy Smith in the 7. He should be good. And then, of course, I think you're going to go through Corey Heim too. But I ultimately like Christian Eckes to win the Truck Series race. The All-Star Open. Ty Gibbs is the overwhelming favorite for the Open. I think Josh Berry is getting I think he's getting disrespected, to be honest with you. I think he's way too far down on the list of people that could win the All-Star Open. So give me Josh Berry, short track guy, North Wilkesboro. I like Berry to win it. Ty Gibbs definitely should be the favorite, but I look at Noah Gragson and I look at Josh Berry as guys that could, and I'll ultimately pick Josh Berry to win his way into the All-Star race. Now the All-Star race itself, and you all are gonna not like me for this, but facts are facts. NASCAR giving those new tires out, a softer tire. Teams can decide what they want to do. I think they have to start on the softer tire, but anytime tire saving is brought up, I mean, there's only one answer as to who you go with, right? And that's Denny Hamlin. He proved that at Bristol. He's so good at really saving his tires, saving his stuff, and using them. Didn't run the best here last year for the All Star race, but I think he rebounds and I think he wins the All Star race at North Wilkesboro. So, he won the Clash earlier this year. I think that's the most similar track to North Wilkesboro's, like the Clash in Bristol. He won both of them. He won Richmond. So, give me Denny Hamlin to win at North Wilkesboro. So, um, I'm still a huge fan of North Wilkesboro being the host for the All Star race. I kind of wish they would get a points race. I want to see, with the repave. They just did a repave for this year. We'll see how it does, and see if the tires do come into like if they wear, and if they don't wear, I could be off. If they don't wear, like Larson who won last year would have to be considered a favorite. And Byron as well. So we'll see. But ultimately, I think the tires wear a little bit, and Denny Hamlin gets the All Star win. So next week we'll be looking forward to the Coke 600, one of my favorite races of the season, especially with this next gen car. It is delivered both times in the Coke 600. So we'll recap that. This has been JD Talks NASCAR. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and of course on YouTube. And thank you all. Let me know what you all thought about this week's race at Darlington 1 through 10. I'm going to go at 8. I thought it was very good for Darlington standards too. So until next time, this has been JD Talks NASCAR. Thank you all so much.